Coming up on Global Business, Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Russia for a three-day state visit that he described as one of friendship, cooperation, and peace. China has kept its benchmark lending rates unchanged for the seventh straight month in March, in line with expectations. And banking shares plummet across Europe as Credit Suisse rescue fails to quell contagion fears. Hello and welcome to this edition of Global Business on CGTN. I'm Guan Xing in Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Russia for a three-day state visit that he described as one of friendship, cooperation, and peace. A welcoming ceremony was held in Moscow's Vnukovo Airport. A written statement by Xi Jinping was issued on his arrival. He says China and Russia have consolidated and developed bilateral relations on the basis of no alliance, no confrontation, and not targeting any third party. He says they have set a good example for developing a new model of major country relations featuring mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation. Xi Jinping also looks forward to having an in-depth exchange of views with President Putin. They will discuss bilateral ties and major international and regional issues of shared interests, and they will draw up a blueprint for China-Russia strategic coordination and practical cooperation in a new era. Chinese President Xi Jinping says his visit to Russia is a journey of friendship, cooperation, and peace. The comments were made in an article published on Monday in the Russian media. Take a look.
The article, titled Forging Ahead to Open a New Chapter of China-Russia Friendship, Cooperation, and Common Development, looks back at the growth of ties over the past decade. It says China and Russia have seen frequent high-level interactions, cemented political mutual trust, and fostered a new model of major country relations. The two nations are committed to no alliance, no confrontation, and not targeting any third party in developing ties. President Xi also says they have put in place an all-round and multi-tiered cooperation framework. He adds that trade exceeded $190 billion last year, up by 116% from a decade ago. The article says China and Russia have acted on the vision of lasting friendship, strengthened traditional friendship, had close coordination on the international stage, and fulfilled their responsibilities as major countries. Looking ahead, the two countries need to enhance coordination and planning, as well as raise both the quality and quantity of investment and economic cooperation. The article also stresses the need to promote people-to-people and cultural exchanges. On the Ukraine crisis, President Xi said there is no simple solution to a complex issue, but China believes as long as all parties embrace the vision of common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security, and pursue rational and results-oriented dialogue, they will resolve the crisis and find a broad path toward a world of lasting peace and common security.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has welcomed the new momentum for stronger bilateral ties heralded by the visit of President Xi Jinping to Moscow. In an article published on Monday in China's People's Daily, Putin said he looks forward to his talks with Xi, adding that their upcoming talks will inject new powerful impetus to bilateral cooperation. Bilateral trade between China and Russia reached $185 billion in 2022. Putin says he expects the $200 billion bilateral trade target for 2024 will be achieved as early as this year. He acknowledged the constructive role of China's global security initiative, adding that Russia and China have consistently worked to create an equitable, open, and inclusive regional and global security system that is not directed against third countries. In many ways, the Chinese and Russian economies are complementary. Expectations are for this relationship to develop even more following President Xi Jinping's visit to Moscow.
This is the strengthening of the economies of both Russia and China. Our cooperation has always been on a mutually beneficial basis. It is necessary to work on projects that will be beneficial for both the Chinese and Russians. Chinese are not easy partners, and so we always carefully approach the development of trade relations, joint ventures, and investments in this regard. But on the other hand, Chinese are reliable partners with whom we have been working with for decades. Naturally, we hope for further development. The development of the world economy will depend on this. World trade will depend on how we develop our relations with the People's Republic of China. The development of the world economy, whether it would be development, stagnation, or a crisis, will depend on how China and Russia are developing.
Now, for more discussions on President Xi's state visit to Russia, let's bring in Liu Xu, Executive Director of the Center for International Energy and Environment Strategy Studies of Renmin University of China. Thank you for your time, Dr. Liu. So what can we expect from the state visit of President Xi? The trip is said to be of friendship, cooperation, and peace. What are your interpretations?
Great. I think the three words are very important. First, I think this is in the recent years, China and Russia has developed a different level of strategic relationship, and those relationships shows a great progress for the national friendship. And I think this trip, this visit, is also a very, very important sign of the personal friendship between President Xi and President Putin. And just like our President Xi said, in the past 10 years, he already visited Russia for almost 10 times. So this is a good sign for the personal relationship between them. And we know this is a very sensitive time because there is a crisis between Russia and Ukraine. And just several days ago, Chinese Ministry of Diplomacy published the Global Security Initiative and also the Chinese position on the Russia-Ukraine crisis. So I think this trip will contribute a lot to push for the further peaceful talk between Russia and Ukraine. And we also know that a lot of Chinese companies, the leaders of the Chinese companies accompanying with President Xi in this trip. And the speaker of President Putin, Ushakov, also cited economic cooperation is very important in this trip. So I think it is very important to think this trip is of great meanings of peace, cooperation, and friendship.
And Professor Liu, what are the factors that have helped the rapid growth of trade between the two sides?
Yes, that's a very great phenomenon, and I think it is of a great historic meanings. Because in the past year, last year is very important and very difficult, not only for Russia but also for China. So we achieve a great increase of the bilateral trade. Well, I think it will could be explained by two factors. The first factor is the relative high level of commodity goods, and we know Russia is one of the major exporters of commodity goods in the world, and China import a lot of commodity goods, including the energy and also mineral goods from Russia. So the higher price contributes a lot to the increase of the bilateral trade. And another reason is the economic sanction from the Western countries against Russia. And Russia is looking for new market, including Chinese market, for its goods export. So I think the factors contribute a lot to the development of bilateral economic relationship.
And talking about the new momentum brought by the visit, will the two sides deepen financial and energy cooperation?
Yes, I think energy cooperation is very, very important. But here I want to emphasize that besides the traditional energy goods, for example, the coal, oil, and natural gas, we need to focus more or pay more attention to the new kind of energy cooperation, the cooperation in renewable energy field. And I think renewable energy will become a new trigger for the further economic and energy cooperation between Russia and China. And financial cooperation is also very important because it will contribute a lot to the stability of the global financial market, and also will reduce the risk both for Russia and China for their financial security.
Well, thank you very much for sharing with us. And that was Liu Xu, Executive Director of the Center for International Energy and Environment Strategy Studies of Renmin University of China. Steady growth in bilateral trade also reflects robust economic ties between China and Russia. Data from China Customs shows that China's trade with Russia posted double-digit growth of over 25% in the first 2 months of the year. The country's exports to Russia jumped nearly 20% to a total of $15 billion. Imports from Russia soared by over 30% on a yearly basis. Bilateral cooperation on major projects in fields such as energy, aviation, space, and connectivity is also moving forward steadily. In the meantime, China has been Russia's largest trading partner for 13 years in a row. In 2022, bilateral trade exceeded $190 billion, up 116% from 10 years ago. Robust trade between China and Russia also reflected in the business opportunities created by the first cross-border bridge between the two countries. Yu Li reports from the city of Heihe on the border with Russia.
This bridge linking China and Russia was designed to help strengthen trade between the two countries.
This is the first highway bridge linking China and Russia. It stretches from the border city Heihe in northeast China to the Russian city of Blagoveshchensk. The bridge spans the Heilongjiang River, opened to traffic last year, and it has greatly boosted the connectivity between the two countries.
Previously, most goods traded between China and Russia in Heihe were transported by water. But every year, when the Heilongjiang River, a key trade passage, freezes, transport will stop for months. The new bridge guarantees that goods can be transported all year long.
截止今年我们3月15日
As of March 15th, 2,950 inbound vehicles, 7,909 outbound vehicles, and 4,600 self-propelled machines passed through the Heilongjiang Bridge.
Song Yinan manages a vehicle export company in both Heihe and Blagoveshchensk. She says Chinese manufactured trucks and tractors are among the vehicles in high demand from Russian customers.
Since last year, Russia has adjusted its import policies, which gives great opportunities to Chinese products, and our company's trade volume with Russia has increased sharply.
The company recorded 300 million yuan in trade with Russian customers in 2022. Song expects it would take only 6 months to reach the same amount this year, in part due to the ease of passing through customs checkpoints.
As a truck driver, I often travel to Heihe. I think that getting through customs here is very quick and convenient. Electronic checkpoints monitor vehicles and verify customs declarations. Vehicles can pass through the checkpoint immediately.
Trade between China and Russia exceeded $190 billion in 2022. It's hoped the resumption of economic and commercial missions between the two countries will see further growth in the year to come. Yu Li, CGTN, Heihe in Heilongjiang Province.
And now we're heading for a short break. Still to come on the program. Financial institutions are offering more services to support rental housing demand of new urban residents in China.
The global economy as we know it sits at a critical juncture. An uncertain world facing unprecedented challenges. In times like these, solidarity, cooperation, and ensuring development are paramount. For over 2 decades, leaders from across the region and around the world have gathered at the Boao Forum for Asia to discuss the most pressing issues of our time and forge partnerships. Join CGTN as we bring you the latest insights, interviews, and analysis from this year's event. Our special coverage begins on March 27th, only on CGTN.
Welcome back. China has kept its benchmark lending rates unchanged for the 7th straight month in March, in line with expectations. The one-year loan prime rate, or LPR, was capped at 3.65%, while the 5-year LPR was unchanged at 4.3%. The LPR is a rate that banks normally charge their best clients and is set by 18 designated commercial lenders. Most new and outstanding loans in China are based on the 1-year LPR, while the 5-year rate influences the pricing of mortgage loans. China is speeding up the development of its rental housing market to better serve the housing demands of new urban residents like young graduates and migrants who cannot afford to buy a house in big cities. China Construction Bank, a state-owned financial institution which was the first bank to provide mortgage loans to home buyers in China, is actively supporting the effort in many ways. Our Song Yaotian has a story.
This building belongs to one of the more than 200 rental housing communities operated by a subcompany of China Construction Bank. Located in Beijing's rural Daxing district, the building aims to provide housing for Beijing's new citizens, mainly youngsters with quality living standards and affordable rentals. 28-year-old Lei Leyang works as a marketing executive. It takes 30 minutes by subway from here to her workplace. It's not the first time she's living in a CCB community, a long-term rental housing run by the China Construction Bank.
I came here after the lease on my previous apartment expired. I'm drawn by the loft design of this apartment. I'm also attracted by the technology they use to keep temperature and oxygen at a constant level.
With various room types, including one-bedroom, family suite, and dormitory-like apartment, the building can meet housing demands of more than 1,000 people.
By the end of February, over 236 rental communities were operating on the CCB housing across China, providing housing for over 400,000 people.
China is now encouraging various entities to invest, build, and operate rental housing communities. Financial institutions like China Construction Bank has actively joined the move by not only building and operating rental housings like this, but setting up funds to support more of these projects.
Last November, the bank set up a 30 billion yuan fund to exclusively finance China's rental housing sector, the first of its kind in the country.
With the fund, we purchase idle assets from real estate developers and transform them into rental communities. We have also set up sub-funds with companies like Wanke to leverage more social capital to participate in the sector.
Experts say the fund has provided the much-needed long-term capital to the sector.
Previously, banks supported companies engaged in rental housing mainly through loans. Loans are debt. Their short-term and cost capital is relatively high. Funds enable the bank to buy the property itself and participate as shareholders and provide long-term capital for projects. The money doesn't need to be returned in short term. The bank gets investment returns through dividend or withdrawals through real estate investment trusts in future. That is very conducive for the sector as investment in rental housing has a long period of returns.
China Construction Bank, a frontrunner in releasing personal housing loans in China, is supporting the rental housing sector in a big way. Loans to the sector have grown rapidly in the past few years.
CCB was China's first bank to provide loans to the rental housing sector. We've been doing this since 2017. The loans have supported more than 1,200 companies and more than 600 government-subsidized projects. The bank's outstanding loans in rental housing are around 250 billion yuan. That's nearly a quarter of the lender's total outstanding loans to the real estate sector.
China implemented a housing strategy that focuses on both purchases and rentals in 2015 at a Central Economic Work Meeting to cater to the growing housing demands of migrant citizens in cities. Since then, the state-owned bank has also altered its mode of financing in housing, channeling more capital toward the rental sector to help with the national strategy. Song Yaotian, CGTN.
China's capital city of Beijing will host this year's China Development Forum meetings from March 25th to 27th. Earlier today, officials from the Development Research Center of the State Council briefed the media on the highlights of this year's conference. A DRC official said that the theme of this year's forum will be economic recovery, opportunities, and cooperation. More than 100 high-profile world business leaders are expected to attend the event. CDF acts as an important platform for exchanges and discussions between the Chinese government, global business elites, and renowned foreign and Chinese scholars.
The topics for this year's annual meeting take into account the industry characteristics of multinational enterprises, focus on the direction of China's economic policies and opportunities for foreign enterprises to invest in China, and provide a platform for participants to communicate with China's relevant departments.
和我国有关部门交流的平台。那么在这个代表构成方面呢，我们会迎来新一届政府。
In terms of the composition of the delegates, we will welcome first-time participants from various governments, including heads of several departments. Many heavyweight domestic and foreign entrepreneurs are also participating in the forum for the first time. Topics for discussion will be mainly on economic aspects. The summit will also have 4 major topics, including China's large market opportunities, global industrial chains, supply chain stability, green low-carbon transformation, and high-quality development of industrial chains.
绿色低碳转型、产业链高质量发展4个方面。
After a suspension of nearly 3 years, foreigners can enter China again. One popular destination for international visitors to China is always the city of Chengdu, capital of Sichuan province. Our reporter Guo Tianqi looks at how it's prepared for an expected influx of tourists.
Chengdu is the largest city in western China. It not only has beautiful scenery, delicious food, but it's also the home to the world-famous giant panda. Because of this, Chengdu has long been a destination for international travelers. The number of foreign tourists in Sichuan reached 3 million in 2019, rising for 7 consecutive years. However, affected by COVID-19, in March 2020, China announced a temporary suspension of foreigners entering China. Visa-free policies in Hainan and other places were also stopped. As the COVID situation eased, China has lifted all the restrictions on entry policies since March 15th. Foreigners with valid visas issued before 28 March 2020 are allowed to visit China again. Visa granting offices abroad have resumed issuing of all types of visas for foreigners. Travel agencies and government in Chengdu are ready for a new wave of visitors.
We have created many routes, including panda tours, ancient Shu culture, and so on. Currently, our tourist guides can speak a variety of languages, including English, Japanese, Russian, French, and so on.
All of our hardware facilities are multilingual. Our community and various tourism reception units all have a certain level of foreign language ability to provide better services for our international friends.
Chengdu will host the 31st Summer World University Games in July. Besides competitors, authorities expect it will attract more international tourists to the city. Guo Tianqi, CGTN, Chengdu, Sichuan Province.
Starting today, Cultural and Tourism Administration departments around China are once again accepting commercial performances by foreign artists. The move aims to revive the country's performing arts market following the pandemic. Our reporter Zhang Shixuan visited a theater and an art center in Shanghai to see how things are going. Take a look.
Having been absent from Chinese stages for some 3 years, overseas commercial performances are once again able to show their artistry to Chinese audiences. The Shanghai Oriental Art Center has just announced its spring and summer offerings, running through August 8th. Almost 10% are international projects, including the St. Petersburg Philharmonic Orchestra, one of the best in Russia. It turns out the theaters in China have been staying ready to resume international performances for some time now.
We stayed prepared even before the resumption was announced. We kept all our overseas contacts going, and now, with this new signal, our projects can go ahead, contract signing and approval applications, that sort of thing. International artists are very enthusiastic about performing in China, and we're setting them up one by one.
The Shanghai Grand Theatre has been quick to take advantage of the change, planning some projects from Western performers at the end of August. During the International Art Festival in the second half of the year, the theatre is also expected to welcome some new productions from world-renowned opera houses, corps de ballet, and symphony orchestras.
We have been waiting for this day for quite a while now. The real recovery of the performing arts market should start with the resumption of approval for overseas performances. That's a positive signal for us to get back to the real normal. We've been in contact with some overseas agencies and troops since the end of last year, but we didn't expect this word to come so soon.
Zhang says the theatre is now also looking for high-quality new creations.
During the past 3 years, many people in China have changed their spending habits. They're hoping to spend more on spiritually uplifting things. So we have to attract the audience with better material, and that means famous orchestras, opera houses, and classic IPs. The classics are still attractive to people here, but they need new presentation and creativity to lure an audience these days.
The return of international performances may indeed further fuel recovery of the local performing arts, but Zhang says she plans to reserve judgment for the time being, since the number of international performances flocking back to the market now is pretty high. Some of their performance fees might be relatively high too. Zhang Shixuan, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
And now to stock markets. Banking stocks continue to remain in negative territory on Monday despite early news that UBS Group, another Switzerland-based investment bank, would take over the troubled Credit Suisse. Credit Suisse shares lost around 60% on a Swiss exchange, while UBS stocks suffered a 16% fall at opening, the biggest intraday loss since the 2008 financial crisis. UBS stocks struggled to make a comeback in the afternoon trading and are still down over 4% from Friday's close. Other major European banks like Germany's Deutsche Bank and London-listed HSBC are also witnessing a downtrend. The U.S. Federal Reserve and other major central banks have announced a coordinated effort to improve banks' access to liquidity. The move will be launched on Monday by the Fed and the central banks of Canada, the United Kingdom, Japan, the European Union, and Switzerland. The central banks will step up swap line operations, which give non-U.S. central bankers greater access to dollars. The announcement came hours after Switzerland brokered the UBS takeover of its Swiss rival Credit Suisse to prevent its collapse. The Fed says operations will continue at least through the end of April. And that would do it for this edition of Global Business on CGTN. Thank you for being with us. The Point with Liu Xin is coming up next. Bye for now.